Hello and welcome to a Talk Lit Get Hit bonus chapter, the little book chats in between the big ones.
We'll talk about reading, authors, and have discussions with people who, like us, can't shut up about books.
We might get sidetracked and talk about literally anything else,
But this is a bonus chapter we wrote just for you. Hello and welcome to the Manacled bonus chapter. You're joined by Talk Lit Get Hit hosts Bridget and Laura. Hi Bridget.
Hi Laura.
Today we're talking about the fanfiction Manacled by SenLinYu.
Before we start talking about Manacled, we just want to make you aware that we will be spoiling the book if you haven't read it already, and also a very big content warning for this one. If you've heard of Manacled online, then you probably know what it's about, but if you don't, there will be themes of torture, abuse, rape, death, physical trauma, and wartime themes.
This is the first fanfiction we're reading on the show, and actually the first fanfiction I have read in years. Manacled was first published between the 27th of April in 2018 and the 19th of August in 2019, and it is huge. I think you downloaded it first, Bridget. I think maybe it was your idea. You were the inspiration for reading this book. And when you're warning me that a book is huge, then I really start to panic.
I felt like I was reading for like literal days and not making a dent. I think at one point I read it for about 4 hours and it was still like, you've read 9%. And I was like, okay, we're in it for the long haul then.
So apparently it has 370,515 words and 77 chapters.
I mean, that's a lot to us, but I'm sure there are some fanfic readers out there that think that's fine. That's nothing. Which
I've been humbled.
Incredible. Yeah, that's incredible to me. It took me a long time.
It took me so long as well. And I feel like I read faster on the Kindle as well because I get a little bit competitive with myself and that the time left in book stresses me out. Mm-hmm. When I read slowly and it increases, then I hate that.
Yeah, it's like I've disappointed it. I've disappointed the Kindle.
Have you seen that TikTok? That's like the really like bad 3D graphic of something like scoop but I slap it, Snova. Like whipping?
No.
Oh. I've seen it when it's like asking ChatGPT to write it again but shorter and clearer. And that's how I feel. When Kindle's yelling at me.
Mm.
Like, where did you get the inspiration to read this book?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's just something that being on the internet over the last few years, I have seen it everywhere. And I wouldn't really say that I'm a massive Harry Potter fan now or as a child. I definitely enjoyed participating when I was a child. But I wouldn't say that I'm in the inner circle of the Harry Potter fandom or Harry Potter fan fiction. But I have known about this book for a long time. I've always been quite interested in the world of Draco and Hermione because, as I'm sure we'll talk about, I cannot stand Harry and I cannot stand Ron. But it was like a boiling point. I'd seen so much about it lately. I was like, okay, this is the time. We're here.
It does feel really inescapable. I was reading an article published in February of this year, and at that point in time, it had 470 million collective TikTok views. I assume that's the hashtag. And I did feel like I was seeing it everywhere. And so for a fan fiction of a fandom that I'm not really involved in to break through in that way, that's real business.
It is real business, and I enjoy how you said that Harry Potter is a fandom that you are not involved in. But, I mean, I know you. I know that is a fandom that you were involved in.
Yes.
Especially in the fan fiction realm.
Aside from the obvious fact of not wanting to support J.K. Rowling and not wanting to support her harmful and awful transphobic views, it simply just became too much. It was like when I discovered One Direction age 17, 18 and found out that Harry Styles was apparently dating Taylor Swift and just becoming so upset and overwhelmed and just being like, how can I ever compare to Taylor Swift? And just realizing I need to just sort of touch grass, as the kids say.
Step away.
Go smell some fresh air. And I think I started to get that sense with the Harry Potter fan fiction world. It just was becoming too much. I'm not really somebody who loves to adopt an interest as a personality. That said, I have clearly made reading my whole personality. You are right. The rumors are true. I wrote a lot of Harry Potter fan fiction. I tried so hard to dig it up for this podcast, but sadly it doesn't exist on the internet anymore.
That is depressing.
It's so sad. I used to write it on this fanfiction site called harrypotterfanfiction.com, and that website's been taken down. Some of the contents were archived by AO3, where Manacled was published, but you would have received an email and you had to like elect to do it, but my email address doesn't exist anymore. So like I never got any communication, and I was so sad. I mean, I haven't thought to read it in years, but like that was my whole personality. I was in all of the forums. It was all I did on school holidays. I had so many notebooks. And that said, Dramione was never a romance I dabbled in.
What was your area of the fan fiction?
I loved Marauders era. This story would have aligned perfectly with my tastes. I loved a gritty, wartime, things don't work out type Harry Potter retelling. I loved something that was like absolutely bitter and harrowing. There's one I remember reading. It was like a one-shot story about the Golden Trio once they had left school, and it was a Harry and Hermione romance, which I still prefer to Ron and Hermione. And they were just like jaded, cigarette smoking, like 9-to-5 Ministry of Magic workers, going to their kids' birthday parties, like hating their lives, missing the glory days, and sleeping with each other under their respective partners' noses. And I was like, yeah, this is good. So
I have to say that I have never really read any Harry Potter fan fiction, but I have always been very into Marauders. In my Tumblr days, I was very interested in just, you know, seeing what's out there and trying things on for size. And I did like the Marauders era. Harry and Hermione as well, for me, I think I would prefer them over Ron. And other than Prisoner of Azkaban, my favourite parts of the whole series is when the three of them are like on the run.
yes,
they're,
it's so
like,
good.
camping, and when Ron has his little tantrum and runs away. But Harry and Hermione there, I love that scene so much. Just that whole vibe is so depressing and lovely.
I was reading a thread on Reddit asking people why they like Dramione, and I think the reasoning checks out. On a base level, people love a bad boy, good girl trope. It speaks to the soul. But on a deeper level, I think people seem to like the sort of opportunity for Draco to have a second chance at a better life, and for Hermione to have an intellectual equal, which people seemingly don't believe she found in Ron.
I mean, why? Why would anybody ever think that?
I think they're two very complex characters, and I do see the appeal in like having the opportunity to explore that. Like when you think back on Harry Potter, there's so many moments where Hermione is doing stuff that Harry and Ron are resistant to, or that's slightly questionable or a bit of a grey area of the law, like the time turner, some of the stuff she's up to when they're on the run.
In her research, I think as well, I think she's doing things without consulting them. Even in the Chamber of Secrets, she figures things out because she's working by herself. She's not really asking for permission. She's just trusting her instincts.
They're handbrakes.
And they're whingy handbrakes too.
The worst. Oh. And so in that respect, I really enjoyed the way that Hermione was characterized in Manacled. I thought it was really smart and really likely that in this alternate universe, based on what we know from the published books, Hermione would look and behave and think in this way.
And also the other characters as well. I think all of them acted as I would expect they would act. I feel like Harry would be as withdrawn and dismissive as he was in the book. I think that Ron would be as thoughtless. I mean, this is my bias coming through about these two, but I think they acted in the way that I expected them to act. And I guess we didn't really get too much of Draco in the books and in the movies, but I mean, even him acted the same way that I think he would have acted in the book.
Coming back to that intellectual equals thing, people seem to really like that Draco is like pragmatic and driven, perhaps not making the most moral choices, but choices that further his own agenda and get him what he wants. So I think with that in mind, it's not a crazy stretch to have him be this character of the High Reeve in Manacled. I don't know if I believe that he's as powerful as he is in this book, because he was kind of like a wimp. But
I also think he was a wimp. And I think his character was sort of just pure antagonism. I don't know, I might have missed it, but I don't know if we really saw much of his intellectual capabilities in the books either. Like, was he getting good marks or anything?
I'm not too sure. I think this might be one of those sort of peppered in after the fact Dumbledore is gay type things. Like, oh, actually, Draco was second in all of the classes after Hermione type thing.
I feel like he always topped potions, but even as a child, I was like, well, that's because, you know, he's Slytherin and Snape and...
Potions are evil.
Yeah. I didn't read Harry Potter fanfiction, but I wrote another kind of fanfiction, and that was the Veronica's fanfiction. And I also tried to find it, and it was also on a forum that has sadly been scrapped from the internet. It was like the Veronica's forum or something. And I feel like I found out so many things on this forum. I found out about Taylor Swift on this forum. Someone posted the Our Song music video when it first came out, and I was like, this is going to be my life for the next 20 years. And I was right. I found out about Katy Perry. And
Whoa.
I really can't remember what I used to write about, but I think I might have said this on the podcast once before, that they just found a set of twins to marry, married the twins, and then they had twins. I mean, keep in mind I was 12.
No, I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
And then the stork brings some twin babies.
Yeah. And then they grow up and they find twins. But in our little fan fiction world, we went to school with somebody who also wrote fan fiction. He didn't write Harry Potter fan fiction. He didn't write the Veronica's fan fiction. He wrote Sea Patrol fan fiction. And I mean, if you weren't in Australia around 2006, 2007, then maybe you don't know what Sea Patrol is. But Sea Patrol is a border security. Is that what you would say?
I think they were in the Navy.
Okay, like a naval show. It wasn't a reality show, but it was sort of like NCIS, but for the Navy.
Yeah, like maintaining law and order on the high seas, and there's just various mysteries and romances.
Lisa McCune was in it. I've never watched a single episode, but I know a lot about it because of our friend who used to write Sea Patrol fan fiction. Have you ever watched an episode?
I don't think so. I'm looking at the IMDb. As the hardworking crew members of a boat patrol the northern seas border of Australia, they face issues regarding immigration, illegal fishing, as well as trafficking of drugs and people.
Right.
God, really hanging out for that illegal fishing episode.
We'll have to send him a message and see if he can access his fan fiction.
I did also try to write Twilight fan fiction once, but I just found that I didn't have the imagination for it. I think to Harry Potter's credit, it was perfect for fan fiction because it just had so much going on and such a well-established world. I feel like I got really stuck in Twilight because I was like, but Fawkes is real. So that means I need to know things about America, and I'm unwilling to do any research. Like we said earlier, the fandom around this book is really, really intense. And even when you're outside of the conversation, it still creeps into your feed, into your FYP, into your subconsciousness. And one of the main things I knew about this book before I even picked up reading it was that the author wrote this on their phone in their notes app while they were breastfeeding their baby.
This is a fact that I knew as well, without ever searching for it. It was handed to me. They'd probably think, this is what you're like. And they were right.
Yeah, I ate it up.
Yeah.
Another thing I've seen about this as well is the fan binding. Fans have actually been professionally printing and binding these beautiful, gorgeous copies of Manacled. But obviously, because fan fiction exists in this sort of grey area and does contain copyrighted content, Manacled isn't able to be distributed commercially. I get the sense that people were creating their own copies and selling them on like Etsy or whatever, which is just crazy. I cannot fathom how much the printing of that book would cost.
I just had a quick scroll through Tumblr and Reddit before we started recording, and a lot of people on there were sort of spearheading a campaign against this bookbinding trend, specifically auctioning off copies or selling copies because they're worried that if people continue to do this, then sites like AO3 will be closed down due to copyright concerns or claims. But this is something that I didn't even really know happened, this bookbinding thing. And it seems like such a skill. And I think I would be very bad at bookbinding.
I would be so awful. I have no attention to detail. I'm not good with scissors. I'm not great with glue. Like I'm always getting cat hair or, you know, my own fingerprint in it or whatever. Yeah. I'd be so awful at it. Obviously, SenLinYu can't profit off Manacled because it is copyrighted and it's, you know, the intellectual property of J.K. Rowling. But they have been able to turn this around into a book deal. And so on that same article on today.com, I was reading that there is a reimagined version of Manacled that's going to take the characters out of the Harry Potter world. And so I think it's due to be published in 2025. It's going to be an enemies to lovers romance centered around the Hermione and Draco characters, but it will obviously be in a new universe, and it's going to be called Alchemized. So it's actually being published by Del Rey at Penguin Random House, which is like I don't know if that's major. I shouldn't comment on that.
It feels major to me, though. Like
anytime I hear the word penguin, I'm like,
and Random House.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about this after I read the fanfiction, and I was asking myself the question, would you still enjoy this book if it wasn't a Harry Potter fanfiction? And I honestly don't know if I would. I think I found it so easy to read and so easy to enjoy because there was no world building, and because I'm so familiar with that world already, it got straight into the action. And when you grow up with a character like Hermione, I think you have a soft spot for her especially. She's the only reason anything ever succeeded in that series. I felt like I was rooting for her the whole time. So I'm just not really sure if I would enjoy the book the same way. I don't know if I would appreciate a different character in the same way as I would appreciate Hermione.
I totally agree. I think it's that, no thoughts, just reading. The world is already established. You have an idea of the characters' motivations and relationships. And also because this is an alternate universe of that sort of last year, or Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, or the outcome of the war, whatever it may be, it was a fun element of the story to see those scenes inversed or see an alternate outcome. It was kind of the same experience as reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, where you're like, I know something you don't know, or whatever it is. And I also wonder if the author is transforming this into a new novel, what is staying and what is going? Because with the Harry Potter element removed, a lot of this story really closely follows The Handmaid's Tale with the surrogacy and repopulation. So if the Harry Potter element is removed, then we're basically just left with The Handmaid's Tale. And then what? I'm really interested to see.
And is it going to be fantasy?
The name is Alchemized, which to me
Surely
suggests fantasy. But if you're removing both of those elements as well, is calling it Manacled Reimagined just a marketing pitch?
Yeah. And what's left if we're removing all of that?
Yeah. Something else that ties into the Handmaid's Tale element of this story, and I will spoil the ending of the Handmaid's Tale if you haven't already read it, so maybe skip forward like a minute to be safe. But there was a question on SenLinYu's blog about whether Aurora ever revealed the truth. And she was talking about how she had this whole metafiction concept similar to A Handmaid's Tale, where at the end we find out that Offred's story was a cassette being studied in history class. She was initially intending, when writing Manacled, to include a fourth epilogue that was formatted as an editor's note, with the implication that Manacled had been written by Draco and Hermione's daughter in order to set the record straight. But then she sort of thought in the end that adding that fourth epilogue in would undercut the impact of Manacled's closing line and ruin the story, essentially. And I wholeheartedly agree.
I agree with it, but it also would have made me feel less sad.
Yeah.
Because it's just not fair
No.
that Hermione doesn't get... And I know she doesn't do it for recognition, but it's just not fair that Harry and Ron get all the... making me tear up. And Draco, like, he's not a bad... I mean, he is a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy. He was a bad guy, but he wasn't a bad guy at the same time. Two sides to every story.
Yeah, I sat with that closing line. Like, I read it and thought, okay. And then the more I felt it, I was like, oh, the implications. It was a heavy last line and an excellent last line.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have this idea that fan fiction is substandard writing. And I know we've talked about this before, and I know we've said time and time again, and logically even I know that's not true. But I was really shocked by the quality of this writing and this storytelling. I really found myself genuinely enjoying it.
I did too, and I really think it's a Tumblr inspired or Tumblr taught style of writing, I think. And I mean, I'm very into that, as we know, big Tumblr fan. I think it wouldn't have the reputation that it does if the writing wasn't as good as it is, because I don't think too many people will be reading something that's 77 chapters long that, you know, reads like anybody could just write it.
Something else that I found really interesting when I was having a squiz at SenLinYu's website is that someone had asked the question, can I read Manacled in chronological order? Because we have like present day, a big chunk of flashbacks, present day, right? Mm-hmm. The flashbacks are right in the middle. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to you and you said, oh God, wait till you get to the flashbacks. I thought this was really interesting because I think it's probably a bit difficult to do on a Kindle. I'm really unwilling to go to, you know, the table of contents and click on selected chapters. But the author's response was actually, yes, they actually recommend reading chronologically if you're doing a reread, and they've been told it's way more heartbreaking to read it that way. And interestingly, they wrote the story intending for it to be read in either order, but they don't advise for it to be read chronologically. I really like that idea, but it absolutely would lose its impact if you started with the flashbacks. When I was looking up a couple of things for this episode, I saw so many people had asked the question, what is Hermione's secret in Manacled?
Oh no.
It's like,
I feel like it was pretty obvious from like probably the first chapter.
Yeah,
I don't know
the
when
first flashback.
Yeah. Well, I think even before that, I was like, oh, well, there's a Harry too.
True. And he obviously cared for her.
Yeah.
And I guess if you know if this is set up as a Dramione ship, if it's in the tags, something's going on there. I have two random things that I need to say about this book. The first is that on the author's Tumblr, Lucky Blue Smith, man of the moment, husband of the moment.
Trad wife, husband. Trad husband?
Mormon husband of the moment is so often used as a Draco Malfoy fan cast. So looking through the website, which is full of delicious imagery and like really great edits and stuff that'll, you know, re-immerse you in Manacled mania if you've ever stepped away from it for even a minute. It was a bit of a jump scare to see Lucky Blue Smith in the mix.
I didn't know that was his name, and I really, really like his name. It's just a shame about the person behind it, I think.
Do we think Draco Malfoy would chew toothpicks?
No, I think he would have like a wrist bone or something. Like he'd have a bone in his mouth. I don't know.
Immediately made me think of the hyenas in The Lion King.
Wrong way, sorry. I was going for menacing, not
cartoonish.
Yeah.
The second thing is that just like our Lord and Saviour Stephanie Meyer, SenLinYu has kept us fed and has provided us with a Manacled playlist.
Oh, fantastic.
Now, I don't think this is really music strictly that follows the theme of the book. They're not songs that are assigned to characters.
Oh, that's a shame.
Like the joy that we had in Twilight. I think it was mainly a playlist of songs the author listened to while writing this book. So it is quite good. We've got a lot of Agnes Obel. We've got some Christina Perri. We've got Lewis Capaldi. A bunch of people I don't know. Billie Eilish.
Oh.
Adele.
Which Adele song?
Skyfall.
Okay.
We've got some bangers from Dario Marianelli's Jane Eyre soundtrack, which is really outstanding. And also a plug to go and have a look at the Pinterest board for Manacled that's on the author's website, because it is a really good vibe. And I think I really pictured this very easily, but I just love it. I just love a vision board.
I think that would be such a fun part of being an author, like creating these playlists, even though I have talked shit about them in the past, but creating these playlists and creating these Pinterest boards and stuff like that. What a fun thing to do with, you know, something you share with so many people.
Will someone please make us a Talklet Get Hit mood board? I don't really know. You could have like the Babysitters Club on it. You could have pencils.
I mean, we could do it ourselves.
Yeah, we'll do one and you guys let us know what you think.
I found myself thinking about a lot of Taylor Swift songs when I read this. I was thinking like maybe like The Great War or Don't Blame Me, or even of Tortured Poets. I was thinking maybe Fortnight. Your Wife Waters Flowers, I Want to Kill Her was sort of giving Hermione Astoria vibes in like the tamest of ways. I really felt immersed by this book, which is something that I didn't really expect. And it's made me think that I will probably, maybe after a little bit of a break, but I will probably keep reading some fan fiction, because I do like Harry Potter. but I don't want to support J.K. Rowling in any way. Even though I own the books, I probably wouldn't watch the movies anyway, but I don't feel like right talking about her, like raving about her work. So I think this is a way for people to enjoy the world that she created without crediting her or without feeling guilty about that.
I think that's a sentiment I share. It's such a shame to have an author who's created this world that was, for lack of a better word, such a safe space and such a beautiful community for so many people, only for them to like shit on the walls and set the house on fire. And so I really like the idea that Harry Potter is more than her.
It's been reclaimed in a way, I think.
Yeah. I was also thinking that I would read some more fan fiction after a break.
I would like some recommendations. So if you guys have like, I don't know, your favorite Dramionies. I think I'm just into Dramione at the moment. I don't know if I really want anything else. What about you?
I'm happy to read Marauders Era Fix.
Oh, actually, sorry. Marauders and Dramione.
One that I had recommended to me was Crimson Rivers, and it seems to be a Harry Potter Marauders Era Hunger Games crossover.
Oh.
There's some reaping involved, Sirius Black, Regulus Black. I always love a Regulus Black story. I loved A Troubled Man.
I love a serious
me too.
Black story. Yeah.
Enigmatic bad boy. Give me more. So, yeah, I need a breather, but I would like to keep going.
Yeah, same.
But what you were saying about Taylor Swift got me thinking about that theory that she's like Tobean 69 or whatever it is.
Ms. King Bean 89.
Yeah. So close.
Yeah. I mean, I think the 89 is a big part of why they think it's Taylor Swift. So it would be 69. It'd be. But I mean, I don't want to get too bogged down in details. But Ms. King Bean, I mean, I assume that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Crazy name. If Taylor, if it's you, why? But they're the author of All the Young Dudes, is that correct? Which I think will be the next one that I read.
I have it downloaded.
Oh, I need to. When this variant of the Tortured Poets department came out, this is the Black Dog variant, I saw people on the internet lose their collective minds because they were like, oh, she's finally going to confirm that she wrote All the Young Dudes. And no.
But what's the reasoning?
Because the Black Dog, like, serious.
Oh, I thought you were saying Black Door.
No, there's loose reasoning.
Oh.
But there's a song on here called The Black Dog. And I think there might be, I mean, once the album came out, they still were convinced because, like, there's a lyric that's like, I howl at the moon. And they were like, oh my God, werewolf. And just other things like that. I was trying to find a list of them before.
Have you tried playing it in reverse yet?
No, not yet.
You never know then.
Yeah. The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. I did see people theorising that that's about Peter Pettigrew when he when he turned into the rat.
Oh my God. Mean, to be fair, he would be tiny.
That's the end of our Manacled bonus chapter. Our November episode is our Nostalgia Throwback Special, and we are reading Divergent by Veronica Roth. Have your say on what we read next by keeping an eye on the link in our show notes and on our socials. Make sure you subscribe to the show, and if you want to be on the same page as us, follow us at talklit.gethit on Instagram and TikTok.